Welcome to Beyond the Pod, presented by SodaStick.com.
Brunette, he moves, Brunette back in, he scores! Minnesota has upset the Colorado Avalanche! Andrew Brunette, the game-winning goal!
Here are your hosts, the second greatest scorer in Gopher hockey history, Pat Micheletti, and the second greatest hockey analyst on this podcast, Brandon Mileski.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by SodaStick.com. I'm Brandon Mileski. Pat Micheletti is off this week. He's on the road. He's traveling, so we'll talk to him and catch up with him next week. But pleased to be joined by the Director of Amateur Scouting for the Minnesota Wild, Judd Brackett. Judd, thanks again. I think your third time on Beyond the Pod. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Before we talk hockey, do you have any cool Christmas traditions in the Brackett family? Anything unique you guys do?
We do. No surprise, we do a morning skate. So, but kids, dads, family affair, a little bit of a tailgate too. So we always have some fun on the rink. Yeah, we'd love to do it outside. We don't get the weather, so we've rented the ice.
Yes, we're going to get 50 degrees today, so I haven't even gotten our ice out yet. Hoping to start flooding on Friday, but I can't wait. I'm hoping to have it ready by Christmas so we can also do that same exact tradition as you guys. Let's talk about scouting and where you're at right now. I wanted to have you on because obviously the World Juniors teams rosters announced, and there's a lot of Minnesota Wild flavor, a lot of your draft picks littered throughout the rosters. Generic question. I know you drafted a lot of these guys a year or two ago, so I don't know how much you still keep up with a lot of them or follow them along, but how emotionally invested are you into the World Junior selections? Are you still paying attention to it and get emotional with picks being made and rosters being made, or have you kind of put that in the past and moving on to the next thing?
No, we follow these guys very closely. Obviously, after draft, it becomes player development. They're very hands-on with these players, but from us as a scouting staff, we take a lot of pride in the selection. So seeing their development and seeing them rewarded a benchmark of making a World Junior selection, even getting invited to camp is a real bonus for us. And it's an exciting time and it's a great reward for the players. And for us too, it sort of goes back and emphasizes that the process was right. And, maybe the projection that we thought is starting to come to fruition.
I want to talk specifically about Canada first, because you had three defensemen that were all in the mix there. Two of them made the team, and Ryan O'Rourke and Carson Lambos. Damon Hunt did not. I want to kind of go through each one of these players individually and what you've been seeing from these players and where they are at with their progress. Ryan O'Rourke, you drafted him 2 years ago. We saw him a little bit in Iowa, I believe, last year. How is he progressing, and what are his strengths, and what does he still need to work on?
And it was a tough decision. He went back to the Sioux this year. The thought process being, at his age, just more ice time, more puck touches. But I think we've seen the benefits of a year in Iowa too, and started sort of some professional tells in the way he carries himself, the way he goes about business. He's a captain there. He does everything for that team, from being a shutdown defender to being on the top of the power play. So, his skill set continues to develop, but his bread and butter is going to be his ability to defend, exit the zone, play with some jam and bite, and he's a great teammate, loves to stand up for guys too.
When you're drafting defensemen, because you've drafted a couple of them now, are you trying to find guys that are a little bit different from each other, or is it just best player available? That's because he seems to have a little bit different skill set than some of the defensemen currently in the NHL, with the Spurgeon and Brodin types and some of the guys you drafted.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's hard. We can't focus on necessarily like a roster composition as an amateur scouting staff. We're looking for best available, but there are skill sets that we gravitate to. We certainly love the leadership, the character, mobility. As a defender too, you're dressed in 6 every night, so hockey sense is critical. Being able to log minutes and have some utility, as I mentioned. O'Rourke does everything from PK shutdown to the power play. So his versatility, his ability to play in any situation is critical too.
The other defenseman that made Team Canada for you, your first-round pick from one of your 2 first-round picks from this previous draft, Carson Lambos. Obviously, he's had some injury issues. Were you maybe concerned that he might not make the team because of all the injury stuff? And where is he at right now in his progress?
Yeah, he had a great start to the year. Obviously, in his draft year, he dealt with some issues. to return to form very quickly this year in Winnipeg. Fast start, high-powered team that's having a lot of success, and he's a big part of it. Had a shoulder injury and cleared just as camp broke. So that was, I think, critical for him to show that he was healthy, that he could take some contact and play through it. And obviously he earned a spot on that team.
One player who did not was Damon Hunt, your third-round pick from 2020. Are you familiar with all the defensemen in Canada? Like, can you go through each country and kind of go, I kind of project this guy to make the team, this guy not to make the team, and what kept him off the roster?
Yeah, a little. I mean, I think we feel like we can do some projection. I would say this year maybe a little less so. A lot of missed time and viewing last year with COVID and limitations with just video. So, for me, getting into Canada this year has been very rewarding, and even just just in terms of inventory of players and where they've progressed. But all indications were that Damon was going to make the team. It was an injury suffered late in the last scrimmage there that caused him from not being selected. So I know a big disappointment for him, but emotionally, he was right there and seemed to have a spot on the team.
What kind of player is he? Because out of all your draft picks, he's probably the one I've seen the least and am the least familiar with. He's
another stout defender. Moves very well. Quick first pass, exiting the zone, likes to push up into the play. In his draft year, another guy that missed a little bit of time with a skate laceration. So production seemed to be, a little bit out of line this year. He's got 9 goals in his draft year, had none. So certainly someone we believed in the ability and thought it would come. He's a two-way defender. Another guy who wears a C in Moose Jaw leader, has for a couple of years now.
Goaltender Jesper Wallstedt, you guys drafted in the first round last year. I still want to go back to that draft because I remember talking to you before the draft, and there was 2 goalies I really liked and wasn't really sure either of them would drop you. He did drop you. I mean, did you ever, when you guys were pre-planning the draft, did you ever think one of those goalies could drop you guys? Were you guys completely caught off guard, or did you think, hey, we might be able to get this guy, and if we do, we got to make sure we get him?
We try to do our best to prepare for every scenario, right? If anything happens, if there's a trade back, trade up, if we can wait it out, so we try to rehearse a bit in advance, but it unfolded certainly in a fashion that we didn't expect, and that's why we were aggressive and went up and traded for him, because he was a player we really coveted.
His numbers seem to be good, a little bit higher level over there in Europe. I don't know how often you get to see the European guys compared to from the North American guys, but what have you seen from him so far this season?
He's been great. I mean, right off the start, he had a chance to earn the net and become their number one, and I think he really did that. It's been step by step, game by game. He's been really collected, really focused. A lot of their games have been 1-2 goal games, so he's in situations where he's got to make saves. He's got to be prepared. Sometimes it's an 18 of 19 shot night with a 2-1 win. So. There's critical saves even there, even though it's not, huge volumes every night.
Also across the pond, your second round center from last year's draft, the 2020 draft from Russia. And I apologize. I feel like I'm going to butcher his name every time, but Marek Kusnedinov, playing in the KHL to start out. I believe his playing time has gone down a little bit, and there might be other reasons for that, but have you been able to follow him and track him, and how close is he to the NHL? Because I think, we're all focused on Rossi in that draft, but he might've been a good find as well.
He had a great start to the year. Obviously jumped right in with the men's team, asserted himself into a top 6 role, and showed a lot. Again, another guy who showed a lot of versatility, was killing penalties, arguably one of their top penalty killers, moved to the wing at times when they needed him. Is expected to, probably be the top line center here for Russia at World Juniors. I would expect maybe wearing a letter. And went over and played against the men in the Carriel Cup in November. So he's got a lot of international experience. He's played against men, and a lot of the reason why he can is he's got great speed. His acceleration, two-way game and details are very strong. So he can assert himself in a men's game very quickly.
Another guy I'm not too familiar with, Pavel Novak, forward from the Czech Republic. What can you tell me about him?
Pavel's playing in Kelowna. He's back in Kelowna this year. Which is where we drafted him out of. He had a great rookie year in the WHL. I actually had an overtime winner last night. I think he's up to 30 points in his first 23 games. Nice. So he's an offensive minded guy. Expected again to be, up there on probably the top line with the checks and on the first power play. He's a skilled shooter, quick release, has a real knack around the net for finding opening in soft spots and finishing.
And then finally, I just keep going. We just keep having a long list of guys that are going to be playing in the World Junior Tournament, which makes it more exciting for a Wild fan to be able to watch a lot of these games other than just watching Team USA. But Jack Pert from Minnesota, kind of an interesting situation with him where he wasn't at the initial tryout and then all of a sudden was just kind of placed on the team. What led to that? And were you guys, was anyone with the Wild in communication with Team USA throughout all this? Because it was just kind of popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, Jack found out on Friday that he was going to get an invite and had to change some plans quickly, get there, and obviously made a very good impression. Got some reps even on the power play in the 2 days there. Good start, obviously, at St. Cloud. I think he's got 10 points in the first 12 games. The U.S. had a change in their, in the camp roster composition with a COVID situation, and I think Jack is very deserving to be at camp and glad that he went in and earned a spot.
All right. It seems like when it comes to these international tournaments, whether it's at the Olympics or the World Juniors, we kind of say the same countries over and over again, right? It's Canada and Russia and U.S. and Sweden and Finland. It always seems to kind of be one of, that group of five. Obviously, you've evaluated this age level more than the vast majority of people on the planet. Who do you like in this tournament? Who do you expect to be the strong teams?
I mean, you hit on them. I mean, Canada, U.S., Russia come in as probably heavy favorites. I think our guy in Sweden could be a big difference too for them. Jesper has a big tournament, and he's gonna have to make more than a couple timely saves. But I don't put that past him. So a bit of a dark horse there. A team that always has a good intro into the tournament. I think they just need to get through that first game of the single elimination.
How much do you watch the tournament? Are you literally watching every single game? Or are you kind of focused on next year's class? What do you do exactly?
I'll be out there for a week, so I'll watch a good portion of the tournament live, and then certainly it's such good hockey anyway. Even if I'm on the road or at home, I'll tune in TV too. This is a fun time. I know it's a tough tournament for draft eligible players, but it's a great one for our prospects and some of the top level guys that are able to play in a U20 tournament as a 17-year-old.
I don't know how much you're allowed to talk about players that haven't been drafted yet. I don't know if there's any rules against it or whether you even want to say anything anyways, but it seems like there's a lot of hype and attention towards this Connor Bedard for Canada, who's 16 years old, playing for the hype is almost like he's a once in a generation type of player. How much have you seen of him and how good is he?
He's excellent. He was, as a double underage, played at the World Championships last year in Texas, and fit in with that team seamlessly. And by the end, you felt like he was helping to lead that group to a gold medal. So that speaks to his ability to integrate into any team that he plays with because of his ability. But he, I would think if you asked him, maybe a little slower start than he expected in the WHL, but by all accounts, sounds like he had a great camp in Calgary, earned a spot on that team. He's an exciting player, plays with pace, plays on the inside, great hands. So given that he's another year out, I don't mind talking about him.
How much have you noticed in the difference in just skill level? When did you first start scouting and how much? Because it just seems like the speed and the skill, even just seeing the kid for Anaheim do that play, and then all of a sudden everyone's copying it on YouTube the following day. With video access now, all these kids can see all these moves. How much have you noticed skill level improve since you started scouting?
It's incredible. The speed and skill. There's a huge emphasis, and obviously on creativity and offense. So it's translating not just to the National Hockey League level, but into youth hockey. And as you mentioned, between TikTok, YouTube, these kids all have access to it. They see it. They want to emulate it, and it's a good thing. I mean, you can't have enough creativity in the game, and it's exciting. At the end of the day, it is entertainment. So the players have to perform and entertain.
I know we're still a long way out. A lot can change, but the 2022 draft class, looking ahead at it, but how does this compare to other classes? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses?
I certainly feel like there's really good depth in this draft. And it could be partly too being back on the road, being in the ranks, seeing players. I certainly feel like video is very helpful, but there's no there's no supplement for getting in and seeing players live. So I certainly feel like I know more players in this year's draft, and that might also be why I feel there's more depth. But no, I think it's going to be a good class. And it's cyclical, right? Everywhere. Sometimes it's strong in Europe, sometimes it's strong in Canada, sometimes it's US. And this year's got a couple areas that are stronger than others, but we got to keep searching and finding players.
How's your comfort level right now with the Minnesota Wild? Because you started during the pandemic when everything was shut down, and the world of scouting completely changed. In terms of relationships with Bill Guerin and the staff there, have you finally reached your comfort level, or you still feel a little separated?
No, I think this has been great, getting on the road, traveling, seeing games, being with other scouts, talking about players in person, not just phone calls and Zoom meetings. So it's so, trust is so important in this business, and having that rapport. So being on the road, seeing guys face to face, talking to them has really, really helped our scouting staff. And I can't say enough about the group and their acceptance of me really not knowing me well enough and getting a chance to through the first two drafts. So
it seemed like you and Bill Guerin and the staff kind of had a plan set in place. You had the contracts you had to get rid of, and it seems like you wanted to go younger and work through the draft. At what point is it hard to deviate from that plan at some point? And when you see how well the team's performing right now, and maybe we're more of a right now team as opposed to a couple of years from now team. How do you go about, as a staff, formulating a plan, and then whether you stick to it or move off of it?
Well, I mean, any plan that starts in Minnesota starts with Bill. It starts with great leadership and communication. But for us in the scouting department, that's what we're focused on. Whether we have 2 first-round picks or no first-round picks, it's our job to find talent, to find players that are going to help the Minnesota Wild win. So, in our department, we can't deviate. We can't think of it in any other way other than we need to continue to draft, develop, and find players for this team.
Have you been able to watch Marco Rossi much in Iowa? I know he was hurt there for a little bit. It seems like he's putting up some points down there. Have you been able to watch him in Iowa at all? And how close or how far is he from being an NHL contributor?
Just video for me. I haven't had a chance to get into Iowa. Plan to, obviously, in the new year. Excited to get there. An exciting group of prospects beyond Marco too. So it's an exciting time in Iowa, as well as up with the big team and at the World Juniors. But Marco's looked really good, much like he did in the OHL. He's finding time and space. His details are strong. Competes there, creating some offense. So it's great to see. I mean, it's you never know, missing a whole year of hockey, what could happen. And for him, I think it's great to build that stamina back up, be in the rigors of a regular season. And I'm sure he'd probably say the same. It's just great to be in the locker room every day, skating every day, feeling healthy every day. And not to mention the results on the ice are what we expected as well.
All right, one final question. I have to ask the regional question for Minnesota here. For the longest time, Judd, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Michigan were kind of the big 3 in terms of developing hockey players. And I think it's over the last 20, 25 years, you're starting to see it expand throughout the rest of the country. Is Minnesota still kind of the top dog? Do you still see good players coming here down the pipe, or has kind of the rest of the country starting to catch up a little bit?
No, there's still Minnesota, like the places you mentioned still might have, maybe the greatest depth of players, but you're seeing them from everywhere. Atlantic on the east side has great players through that Long Island, New Jersey area is really growing, but we're seeing it everywhere. California, we're seeing it, Florida, Texas. So there's really no limits to hockey in the U.S. right now, which is great. It does sort of localize its talent to the national team and USHL but Minnesota still very much producing very good hockey players. They might not all stay home and play for their high schools anymore. Some leave for the national team or elsewhere, but there's the grassroots level is still excellent.
Judd, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and enjoy that Christmas morning skate.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks. Judd Brackett, Director of Amateur Scouting. I want to tell you about sodastick.com. Go to sodastick.com to get your original Minnesota sports inspired goods. If you haven't seen the stuff yet, you got to check it out. One of my favorite designs is the North State hat. All of their apparel is screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts, and you'll love it. We're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. So use the code KFAN for 15% off. That is sotastick.com, SOTASTICK.com. Original Minnesota sports inspired goods. Use the code KFN for 15% off your next order. That is it for Beyond the Pod. A little bit shorter episode today because I don't have Pat Micheletti to lean on. He'll be back next week, though, and appreciate you joining us so much. Whether you are listening on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast, make sure you subscribe, and then also make sure you can watch us on the KFN YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe channel to KFN so you always are notified when the latest episode of Beyond the Pod comes out. We'll talk to you next week on Beyond the Pod. Thanks for listening. Bye.